Father Kelly, thanks a lot for your cooperation. At the end of this press conference about this new document, my first question is, what's the goal of this document?
Yeah, I think the goal, I had mentioned this in my opening remarks, Pope Francis's speech to the general congregation when they were electing the new pope, and he talked about wanting to get out, Jesus wanting to knock on the door to get out into the world, to be where the people were. And I think maybe that's one way to understand the goal of this document in the broadest sense. It's an attempt on the part of the Church to be out with the people, where they're living, and in their own experiences, in their joys and hopes and anxieties and fears. And one of the places where that's happening, and maybe we could say has always happened, or happens all throughout many different cultures, is play and sport.
During your speech, you mentioned, you quoted actually Thomas Aquinas. Can you repeat just because it was very interesting?
Yeah, so this was also very surprising to me when I was doing my doctoral dissertation. I came across these passages in the Summa Theologica where Thomas asked the question, can there be a virtue about games? And he answers yes. And the reason that he answers yes is because for him, virtue had to do with moderation. He's getting that from Aristotle and the ancients. And so if a life is only comprised of work or worrying about work, then it's excessive. It's not a moderate life. Or study, if a person's studying excessively, then that's not virtue for him. That a fully human life needs also time for play and recreation. His thinking actually was the most influential thinking on late medieval preaching about this topic, but then also you see it very clearly in the humanists during the Renaissance as they're starting schools, and the early Jesuits when they're starting schools. They use that thinking about moderation to say that the kids need time to play sports during the school day. Maybe just to say one thing, though, he doesn't think that play has its meaning or significance in relation to work. In other words, to get us rested up so that we can go back and be more productive at work, because then it would put its meaning in relation to work. But he says rather, this is a quotation translated into English, nothing further is sought in play than the soul's delight. So he says we play for its own sake. But the end of the enjoyment of play is the human person and the recreation of the human person.
North American culture is totally different about sport compared to Europe or Italy, actually. Do you really think that this kind of document can help in some way the North American culture about sport?
Yes, and it's the context that I'm most familiar with, having grown up in the United States and working now in the United States. So yes, I do think it can make a difference in a country like the United States. Let me just continue talking about Thomas Aquinas to answer the question. So I think you can see in the Catholic heritage, and it goes beyond Thomas Aquinas too, what we might call a play ethic, which is distinctive. In the United States, especially, we think about the Puritans and then the Protestant tradition as associated with a work ethic, and with the Puritans, maybe especially, because work is exalted to the extent that it is, play begins to be regarded with suspicion, a new kind of suspicion. And I think there's a trajectory in the United States where work is highly valued, business is highly valued, things that make money are highly valued. And I still think we struggle with, though, play, in the sense of, this is what Thomas calls it too, enjoyment, doing something for its own sake, like the meaning of the activity itself. And I think in our contemporary context in the United States, this remains a problem. And you would know better than I do, Matthew. I'm sorry, I'm talking about the United States here. You would know Canada better. So I think one of the values of the document is that it's trying to articulate what's the human meaning and significance of sport. That's the, its own sake. That has to do with its internal kind of goods, which I think we need to have that in the United States. Because if you don't have that, then sport becomes vulnerable to being used for instrumentally for other ends or other purposes. And that's a mindset and an approach to sport that's very widespread, I would say, in the United States today. Sometimes people themselves, could be kids, parents look at sport only as a means to college scholarship, for example. But sometimes institutions, including high schools, universities, can only view sport in relation to the external goods of the institution. It'll get us more television time, etc. So there's a temptation to lose sight of the human significance and meaning of sport itself.
Thank you.
You're welcome.